I get it now. Like I'm on the alumni board, and but I didn't get it when I went into college, like the value of the alumni network. But freshman year, a guy came and spoke named Mike Hurd. And I remember everyone got up and filed out of this, like, I don't know, 75 person, lecture hall. At the end, and Mike was just standing on stage, and Emily and I are like, let's go talk to this guy. He was like vice president of production at 20th Century Fox. He's TCU alum. So I remember walking up to him and being like, hey, I'm coming to LA next week. I'm trying to get an internship for the summer. Can I grab lunch with you? And here's my card. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And so
it's that easy.
Yeah. So then I planned a trip to LA. Right. But again, with Dad working for the airlines, it was like, I could go on his passes, especially in college, and it was like free. So a lot of times I'd fly out to LA for these meetings, and people are like, think I'm some rich, kid from an oil and gas family in Texas. And I'm like, I'll believe what you want.
I could say a lot about this next cat, but one thing I cannot say is that he followed the status quo. He managed to build a business, an entertainment business even, from the ground up in a place where he did not have any business doing so. It's a pretty remarkable story. Now he's taking care of others, inspiring them and leading them in ways to allow for other people to succeed as he did. It's Red Sanders, owner of Red Productions. He's a producer and entertainment entrepreneur, and you're going to love this story on the Tee Cad. So let's start there. We were talking just a second ago about interesting places that people will move that you wouldn't expect. And you see a mass exodus of people moving from Cali to Austin and different places. There's still centralized areas where a lot of this work happens.
Yeah.
You've always been an anomaly in my eyes because you're a movie producer, a commercial production company, and you're a collector of stories and somewhat of a philanthropist. We'll say that. I almost said philanderer. Well, I don't think so, no. But okay. But what's interesting is a lot of those people are now moving to different locations because they're actually able to accomplish the same kind of work without being in a centralized place just because of how media is and communication is. So you, having been the beast that has weathered the storm the entire time, because when you started your career, you had a decision to make whether you were going to stay in Fort Worth or go to LA. And I know you have a base in LA, right? But your primary base is in Fort Worth?
Yeah. Home base is here. And, but yeah, when I did graduate TCU now many years ago, it feels like, all my friends moved to LA and New York with their film degrees. And I had a great mentor here, David Miner, who wasn't in the industry, but had run, successful businesses. And he was like, you got a business going here. Like, why would you move out there and like reset? It's like, what if you build it up here and then go there on your own terms? And we were able to effectively do that, kind of grew here for the first 7 years in business, then opened an office out there about 7 years ago. And yeah, now it's fun because it's like my friends I went to film school with that moved away are now moving back. And like I just heard the other day that a buddy I went to TCU with, Ben Grayson, just moved back to Austin, and he works with Chris Hemsworth, and Chris is in Australia most of the time. So it's like, I'm sure it's a type thing.
Yeah, and what's the point of living in LA when the guy you're working with is still across the world anyway, right?
Or someone the other day on Taylor Sheridan's team said, Gavin Newsom just got Salesman of the Year award from U-Haul because so many people are moving out of California and running U-Hauls. Yes. But it is exciting to see, this creative kind of moment happening in the state where like people are paying attention to and respecting these stories here. And I think there's always been an interest for like Western stories, right? Like it's one of the oldest genres. But I do feel like there's a resurgence in that, and probably in large part thanks to Taylor Sheridan and what he's doing. So
and because of location, I mean, there's always been Texas stories told, but they just rarely tell them in Texas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's the problem is each time we come up on the legislative, session, which is coming spring, it's like, we'll go and we'll talk to our legislators about like, we need strong incentives here because all of our states around us, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, all have really strong, and even Arkansas now have strong incentive programs attracting the talent out to their states and attracting the projects that are coming from all over the US. But they're going to, if you're already leaving LA to go tell your story, you're between New Mexico and Texas, you're going to go to the state that's got the best incentive and the best look for it creatively and the best crew. And so it's really like, it's kind of a trifecta of those three things. So we always want to make sure we're like keeping that message out there. But I guess like I've veered away from what you kind of said there, which was we'll talk about these stories with legislators where it's like Taylor Sheridan's Hell or High Water, for instance, was a great one where
amazing.
I remember I think that was 2017, 18 session, like I went and testified on the Senate Appropriations Committee because we had a film that had shot in Fort Worth and we premiered at South by that year and won there. And our next film, we were looking at having to shoot in Oklahoma. And I testified on the committee there, which was like, kind of like, it sounds like, I don't know. I guess you hear that in the news, like someone has to testify in front of a committee and it's a bad thing.
It's ominous.
It was super easy. It's like you go in, you tell your story in 3 minutes or less and get out. And the head of that, the chair of that year, I remember he started talking and he's like, kind of grabs his suspenders. He's like, now in my district is where the story for Hell or High Water is based. And, I watched that movie and, I don't remember any mountains out in West Texas where I'm from. And I was like, yeah, sir, because they went and shot that in New Mexico because, that's where they got a better incentive there. So we are thrilled, though, again, just to see like people really paying attention, I think, more than ever now, both on like, and it's because I think so many people are moving here from outside who are creatives. And
how does it work with unions?
Yeah. Good question. Texas is, like most states, a right to work state. There are unions here. We work with like SAG actors and there's the IATSE union for like a lot of your crew members. But in Texas, there's a lot of stuff that you can do, independently that's a low enough budget that it doesn't involve unions and, or at least some of the unions. So I'd say it's like a really friendly state to.
Yeah, but I mean, working around unions, even from afar, is especially if you have people that are members. I mean, it's always kind of playing with fire in some way, right?
I don't know. I mean, I actually I'm on the board with the head of IATSE. I'm on the Texas Media Production Alliance board, and we were talking yesterday because I know that there's a lot more work coming up here to North Texas, and I said, hey, well, let's do something to like get like a workforce development thing going here, because everyone was put to work on 1883 last year.
Right. And
they flew a lot of people in because there just wasn't enough, qualified people to fill I think they had like 800 roles they hired for. And yeah, he even then said, he was like, our unions are a little slow sometimes to move on like a quick need of that many people. So I do think it's a thing where it's like, it takes a little bit of everyone in the community. I think it's like, it's a thing where it does come down to workforce development. How do we plan for the long game in that? How do we make sure that there's like students that are being provided opportunities and trained in schools, like, and early and like I went to a high school that had a film program or like a radio TV film class, but that was kind of a rarity then. But now I think you see that in most schools that they have something there.
Yeah.
The sad thing is sometimes they have like the technology, but they don't have someone to teach the kids what to do with it. But
even in high schools, you're seeing some of those classes and business classes and different things like that, which I think is also necessary. But I was even surprised that TCU had much of an RTVF program. So backing it up, then you went to TCU. Was this kind of your plan before you launched? Were you looking to go into this industry specifically, or how did you end up making the decision to get into this industry in the first place, preceding this creative question about building here and then expanding out?
Yeah. So growing up, my mom was an artist and art teacher. My dad works for American Airlines. And so it was always fun. It was like either on the weekends, we were like coming to Fort Worth to go to these great art museums we have here, because I grew up in Grapevine, or we were going to the airport and like working a trip with dad to, I don't know, Hawaii or an island, and then come back on Monday.
Poor baby.
Yeah, poor kid. but it was really fun because I think just like the way it kind of helped open up my worldview to things. And then, I stayed close for college because throughout kind of like, I guess starting as early as age 12, I started my first business, which was a DJ company. And then quickly as we started doing weddings, I was like, oh, let me see what I could video too with this. And a lot of this, by the way, just came from kind of a throwback to Radio Shack. I would like ride my bike down the street to Radio Shack and be like, look at this gear. And I love all that stuff you got here in the studio, but I would look at it. I had no idea what it did, like this audio gear. And I bought it with a loan from my grandfather and figured it out. And then I figured out like, oh, people will pay me to play music at gigs. Like, that's cool. And then I started, so it always kind of started fresh, I think, with like an interest in like the technology, but what I could do with that. Mm-hmm. And then with that, when I got into TC, I was like, okay, well, this has been working. Let me stay here. This is how I was able to pay for school and continue to do DJ gigs on the weekend and videos during the
college,
week. And yeah,
college, like, has to be gigs plenty, right?
Oh yeah. I remember I actually rushed freshman year, and then like in going through rush, I was like, yeah, so like I have this DJ company, and they're like, oh yeah, no, that'd be great because then you can DJ our parties for free. And I was like, no, you see, like it's how I'm paying for school, so I need to be free on the weekends. And they're like, no, you're ours on the weekends, pledge. And I was like, okay, I don't think this is gonna work.
Yeah, but
give me a call if you need a DJ.
Yeah,
ended up doing all the parties, and it was still fun
and getting paid.
Yeah.
So how was the program overall? I mean, did you feel like you were set up at the time? Because again, me having come up in the music industry, it really was about getting to a point where you had your education behind you, and then you either go to LA, Nashville, or New York, and then that's where everything starts. And I mean, I know I'm older than you, but it seems like only recently has that dynamic changed. So.
Yeah, because, again, to date me, is like YouTube started the year I graduated. And so like that was just the beginning of when you could really actually, like, we were shooting stuff on digital ever since I was young, but to distribute it on digital and through the internet, like that was a new thing then.
Yeah.
It's like we were having to compress video at like all these different rates for people's different, some of them still in dial-up modems.
Right.
Sounds crazy now to talk about, but yeah. And so, yeah, but like as far as like TCU's program goes, then like it was a really great program, and I really liked it because just the smaller class sizes and like ability to really get to know my professors, like Chuck Lamandola, Greg Mansour were like really great kind of mentors to me in the program there, and I built up a trust with them and got to be like the studio manager, and so like I would kind of have access to the studio at other times to be able to go in and like, I don't know, just try stuff out, see what works.
Projects.
And just like the student film kind of group, that kind of became our own little, I guess, again, I didn't do a fraternity, but we had our own little core group there within that. And specifically like 3 really good friends, like Emily Moss, Ben Grayson, who I mentioned earlier, who just moved back, and then Anton Syme. Like we would do these projects together, sometimes just for fun and goofing off, and other times like for like actual pay and gigs and yeah. And it really clicked. I think like I get it now. Like I'm on the alumni board, and but I didn't get it when I went into college, like the value of the alumni network. But freshman year, a guy came and spoke named Mike Hurd, and I remember everyone got up and filed out of this like, I don't know, 75 person, lecture hall. At the end, and Mike was just standing on stage, and Emily and I are like, let's go talk to this guy. He was like vice president of production at 20th Century Fox. He's TCU alum. So I remember walking up to him and being like, hey, I'm coming to LA next week. I'm trying to get an internship for the summer. Can I grab lunch with you? And here's my card. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And so
it's that easy.
Yeah. So then I planned a trip to LA. Right. But again, with Dad working for the airlines, it was like, I could go on his passes, especially in college, and it was like free. So a lot of times I'd fly out to LA for these meetings, and people are like, think I'm some rich, kid from an oil and gas family in Texas. And I'm like, well, believe what you want, but
yeah. People are still going to think what they think.
But Mike, is still a good friend to this day and was a great mentor as I was starting this. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been, I'd say, between like my core friends there and then David Miner, Mike Hurd, like those were people that really helped me early on in this. And then also like at TCU, outside of the film program, was like the business school. And David Miner had started the entrepreneurship program there under the business school. And he got a professor to come in and teach this technology and entrepreneurship class named Joey King. And Joey and I hit off really well. And I learned so much from him. He had, started a tech company that grew really big in the .com era. And then, just started teaching then. And through his class, like I put together this idea that was kind of like a website marketplace for hiring people for events. So like if you needed a DJ for a wedding or whatever, it was like a marketplace for that whenever that was a new idea. Okay. And we took that to a business plan competition, a national one at Tulane, and we won. And then we ended up like through that getting this office at Tech Fort Worth here, which I had no idea about. But the city has this building down at Rosedale and 35. And it's basically incubator space where they provide, lower barriers to entry, i.e. cheaper rent, for startup businesses, which is key because at that time I was still running it out of my college house with my roommate. And, he was kind of a mess. Yeah. He's great, but it wasn't always clean when clients were coming over. And so, like getting into Tech Fort Worth, there was like a really pivotal thing kind of that first year out. And that also came as again from this, doing that business plan competition with professors there and all that. So is that, when you started your production company, obviously that was a new transition. So is that something you launched post-graduation? Literally at graduation, I started like the new, what is now Red Productions. So up until that, I'd been doing it all kind of like commingled and probably my personal checking account or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, if I'm staying here, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to form this LLC. A friend at TCU's dad was a lawyer. He helped file it with the state. It seemed really daunting at the time. Yes. Didn't know it's like pretty easy, like, fill this stuff out, but it was great. And to have like a actual lawyer do that. Yes. And then I went to the school and I was like, hey, so for graduation, everyone, they get the option to get a picture, but like, what if we like video this and do like a stream up on the screens? At that time, again, couldn't live stream it, but we then sold DVDs of it. And so like for, grandparents that couldn't make it or whatever, people could buy a DVD. And so like I walked across the stage while like Emily and Anton, I mentioned earlier, they were like doing the camera work and then we like edited it together afterwards. And
that's awesome.
I think, that's still our longest standing project. We still do it twice a year.
You still do?
Yeah.
I bet it's a lot better than it was.
It's the only live event thing we do, but it's a great, it's fun then still to go back and do. So.
And did you leverage a lot of the relationships with these cats that you went to school with in order to make some of those connections out in LA? Because again, at the time, I know you were starting. How do you source stories from the beginning? Mm-hmm. Because I have a question too that I want to get to, and maybe you want to tackle these at the same time. But how did you in the beginning, and how do you now source stories, and in particular stories that make a difference? Because I know you're an impact guy also, and you have a lot of involvement in the community and stuff like that. So maybe compare and contrast how you used to do it when you started from the ground and where you're at now and the opportunities to pull stories that really fit your wheelhouse.
Right. Yeah. So when we first started like moving into, so we have Red Productions, which is our commercial production company where we work with brands to tell their story, right? But it's a commercial. Then we have Red Entertainment, that's our like original content arm. And that's what we started like a few years in to be able to like create our own IP and like work with other filmmakers and writers to like tell original stories, right? That are not an ad. And when we started Red Entertainment, like to get stories and scripts at that time, it was like just asking around. And the funny thing is you can get a lot of stories if you just like, whether you're like posting on the internet, message boards, going to community, like industry meetups and stuff like that, but they're probably not the right stories. And for the first few years there, it was kind of something where we cast a really wide net and we didn't have any mandate written out as far as like, this is the type of work we want to do. Cause we're young and we didn't know.
And you need work. I mean, you need to produce things,
Yeah.
right? You need a library or something, right?
Yeah. And then we didn't want to rule out opportunities, I guess, before we knew whether or not it was something that made sense. The first film we ended up doing, the first feature we did all the way through was Searching for Sunny with this filmmaker, Andrew Disney, who grew up in Fort Worth, moved away to New York, for school at NYU. And while he was at NYU for his senior project, he had to write a feature script, and he wrote this story about like his high school in his hometown. So it was loosely based on his experience growing up here and going to Trinity Valley. And he sent instead of just like doing the normal thing, which at that time would have been just like to send the script out, he got a DSLR camera had just come out. It was like the first DSLR camera you could shoot video on. And he shot this teaser trailer here with his friends in Fort Worth. And this thing, someone picked it up, like Filmmaker Magazine or something, and said, the first ever feature film that's going to be shot on a DSLR camera is Searching for Sunny. And they put the teaser trailer out there, and this thing went, viral. And I remember seeing it and being like, this cat's in our town. Like, we got to meet this guy.
Yeah.
And Greg Beecham at the time, who was working with me and like on everything we were building there, and like, he was the first guy I hired full time, and was such a great, teammate as I started this out. He read the script and he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is really good. Like, you got to meet this guy." And we met with Andrew. We hit it off. We did that film together with a lot of great support from people in Fort Worth, whether it was people that believed in us and invested in the film, whether it's people that opened up their locations to us. There was even a location, because, it's the first movie we're doing. So, of course, there's like a shootout on a tarmac at an airport with a private jet, because like we didn't know what stuff cost. And luckily, like one of the guys interning for us, his dad was like higher up in a fire department nearby here. And so we had like fire trucks and like a whole like police scene.
Perfect.
It was great.
Yeah.
It cost us like the insurance for the private jet.
Which is probably still plenty.
Yeah.
On that budget at the time, I'll bet.
Yeah. But then we, followed that up with like this other film with Andrew. His second feature was called Intramural. And then when it got released by MGM Orion, they retitled it Balls Out because they thought that'd be more funny. And they put a like fake girl's butt on the cover. So if you look it up, like we did not have anything to do with the artwork.
Really?
Yeah. We actually were quite against it because we're like, this makes this look like a film that we did not make.
Right.
And because it's like fake girl's butt and says this semester everyone scores. And we're like, guys, did y'all watch this movie? Like there's no nudity in this movie. Like,
wow.
It was just a fun buddy comedy. We ended up hitting this like really great cast with it, with like Jake Lacey, Kate McKinnon, Beck Bennett, Jay Farrow. So those last year just said all were on, like ended up on SNL by the time we premiered. 3 more of the actors ended up in the writer's room on SNL. So we premiered it at Tribeca, and it was like marketed kind of as this like fun SNL comedy thing. But then Saturday Night Live was like, we didn't have anything to do with this. Like they were a little worried.
Yeah.
But then they watched it and it was okay.
But that says a lot about how you put things in your wheelhouse too, because you can, when you only have so much control, and me being, if I write a book and then it takes off, then I'm even thrice removed. I mean, there's all kinds of changes that I just, unless I'm working with people who, just integrally want to work with me. So it's when you experienced that changed the way you approached projects like that? Or do you often run into projects where you put it together, you have a vision, you do a lot of these parts, and then when a production company gets a hold of it, they still jack it up? And in that case, it's almost counterintuitive to your brand. That's kind of what you're implying to me, right? I mean, that's brand-wise, that's not the way you would have presented it, at least.
Right. But that's the difference. Like, we love doing co-productions. Like, we think, believe in collaboration over competition. And we are not a distributor or marketer of films. So like we have to always partner with a distributor and someone that's going to market it. Just in that case, like the marketing department went wheels off. Like it was like, to kind of come back to the question you asked a moment ago. So it's like, that was like early days, like our first 2 films. And now it's like, now what we look for in it, and what shifted for us was like, we started doing this thing both with all our companies, where it's like called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it was like this book this guy wrote. It was like all the things that a small business needs to do. Traction, yeah. But they never do. And I'm like the ADD visionary guy. And after I read the book, or I read like the first like quarter of the book, and was like, oh yeah, we totally need this. I'm not going to be able to finish this, but hired a really great, guy who's now VP of operations for us, Stephen Navarro-Landa. And I gave him the book. I remember at the beginning and before I think he accepted the job, I'm like, just so you know, like this book, like we need this. And I think you're hardwired and have the talents to implement it here.
You have an organized mind type. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was so key, was like, seeing that like, all right. 'Cause as we had grown over the years, in the first few people that joined the team, it was like hiring other friends from film school, like Sam Parnell, who's still our VP of post now, and just been such a tremendous, partner and principal as I've grown this. Yeah. But I also like, there were a lot of other, like we had hired a lot of people like us, like so we had a lot of the same skills and talents in one area and weaknesses in one area. So Traction helped us really, I think, round out the team well. And one thing in Traction that they tell you to do, plus at the same time, I'd gotten to know this guy, Michael DeLuca, who was the, head of MGM Films recently, just moved over to be the head of a Warner Film Group, but he splits his time in Fort Worth. And he was speaking actually back at TCU at like an alumni conference there. He's not an alumni, but he's gotten plugged in with the school. And so he was speaking, and I went to his talk, and his whole talk was like on like the value of really picking a lane. And I was like, oh yeah, we have not picked a lane on our original content side. We had done 7 films. They were like more so than not usually comedies, but they were kind of like all across the board.
Yeah.
They weren't all comedies either. So some are like dark, some are bright, some are shot in Texas, some are shot in New York. And so I like taking Michael's advice and looking at Traction with our team. We really, for Red Entertainment, set out and set like, what our big kind of like our mission or purpose was or is to do good work that matters and enable out of the box ideas. And we like to do that through quality original content that's inspired by the modern West. And so we've tweaked that just ever so slightly over the years, but like that's really been kind of our main focus, which is like, just making sure that like anytime you do a film or a TV show, I mean, it's a big endeavor. It's a lot of time. It's different than a commercial, because commercial, it's like they're really great and creative as well, but there's like a shorter time window that you're doing it. So like if anything's, not working on it, or maybe I don't know. If you get bored with it, you don't get bored with it, because it's like, boom, it's going, right? The next one's coming in. And then, but on a film, it's like, we never do them alone either. So we're always teaming up with someone, either writer, director, other production company, all of that usually. We want to be doing that work with like creatives that we want to work with again, because it is like such a long, can be 2
and you got to
4
find
years.
people that align with the way you work and stuff too. So you can call a lot of the same crews back and knock things out. Right. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of scuffling going on when somebody's wanting something one other way.
Yeah. Which is fine when it's done right and with respect.
Yeah.
When it's like, you get that, like, I get it. You really have a creative vision. You want to see that through. As producers, we're not here necessarily to like interrupt that creative vision, but to help support it, highlight it, remove obstacles for that director. And I remember Jason Headley, who we did a film with called A Bad Idea Gone Wrong, he had said afterwards, he said he went back home after doing the movie, and he told his wife, he's like, man, if this movie works or doesn't work, like it's really all going to be on me. I'm not going to be able to blame the producers, because like, we were really collaborative, but ultimately we like let him realize his creative vision for that.
Awesome.
And then, that was his first feature, and now he just wrote Lightyear for Pixar, which just released a couple months ago.
Absolutely.
It's been really cool to see his career grow. So yeah, I mean, we have definitely picked a lane in that. And what it does now when we're looking for projects is it really helps, especially ADD visionary guy over here, to have blinders to be like, all right, this is what we're working on.
Right.
Does this
either fits or doesn't? And then you've got a smaller amount of things that you can actually look at.
Yeah. And we've got, I mean, with that footprint, we expanded it. We used to say quality original content that honors our Texas roots, because we really wanted to stay focused on Texas stories. I love like what Texas Monthly has built up over the years. And I love Texas stories. Like that's why we're home base here, and we'll be. But we changed that for two reasons. One, we're called Red Productions. We hop on calls with people in LA and New York, and we talk about things that honor our Texas roots, and they think it's a political statement, which is not. And with everything going on in our state and the politics that have sadly come out of it, like that wasn't what we represented.
And either state's got their own set of issues.
Yeah, exactly. And then like, so yeah, plus it was like, you know, we didn't necessarily want to not do a story because it was maybe based in Oklahoma. Like there's great stories all around, but to still stay focused in kind of the modern West, we called it. So I think that also, you know, lends more towards like stories that have inclusiveness to it and just, you know, explore what's going on in this day and age here. So,
and then
we're not going to get in obviously Taylor Sheridan's lane there with we're not going back to the 1800s here, but I love that just the West overall, like the way he has really amplified that. So,
yeah. And he didn't start necessarily going back that far either. You know, when he launched just movies and stuff too, there was a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Hell or High Water is a good example too.
Yeah.
So you are sort of sharing a little bit of that lane, right? And you work with, now that you have come to grow this company and your influence around here, you and DeLuca work together on some projects too. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we're in the early stages of starting something together. Marty Bowen, who's from Fort Worth, called me earlier on in the pandemic and was like, I want to do something to like give back here, just strictly altruistic. We keep seeing these projects go to other states. They're Texas set stories. What can we do? And we put our heads together. And DeLuca joined in as that as well. And we were like, well, let's create this fund that's like on top of the state film incentives, or sits somewhere in the gap in the middle of state film incentives and then like the private equity that typically makes, you know, a film capital structure work. And we said, well, we'll raise this money as a nonprofit that we can like, in essence, loan to these projects that need that to close that gap. And they're going, we could shoot this in the next state over. We don't want to, but we still need this much money. And we go, okay, we'll loan that money to you. And then in success, if it works, pay the money back to this nonprofit that we're starting, and then we'll pay it forward in the next project. And so we are calling it the Gone to Texas Fund. And, you know, hopefully we get more people coming to Texas or staying here with these projects. And so like the prereqs would be that, you know, that it's a Texas set story, fact or fiction, and that it has like a certain amount of people above the line. And like that means your key roles,
right?
Like writer, director, producer, your cast, like key cast roles.
You don't want to end up with somebody's home movie.
Right. But you know, we want a certain amount of people in those key roles to be, you know, Texas natives, maybe coming back or live here now. So,
and it's to incentivize people that are up and coming but don't have the funds to make the movies that they want to make. Or it's actually more in the middle of someone's probably career, where it's like they've made a few films, they've got, you know, industry financiers involved who know that it doesn't make sense to shoot a movie where they're not maximizing their, you know, expenses, but I mean their film incentives, and so if they're going, well, we're going to get $1 million more out of our budget if we go to Georgia, then we go, well, why don't we loan you that $1 million on really friendly terms, and you keep it here, and then, you know, again, if it works for you, pay that back, and we're going to pay it forward to the next project. So yeah, that's a ballsy move.
in this industry.
Yeah.
There's so many things don't work.
Yeah. But then we also are raising it as like a nonprofit. So
Mhm.
we feel like there's probably enough people that have been like pitched or invested in movies and lost their money. And, we wanted to just kind of be like, let's do this all for the good of like the state and the people here and the people that want to make a career here, have like raise families here and make movies and TV shows here and not have to always be, maybe their families here, but then they're always flying out of state.
Right.
Like I got 3 young kids. Like I love being able to come home and see Jenny and the kids each night. It's like, couldn't imagine if I was out of town for 3 months on end doing a project.
And by design, for you to be as successful as you are, that's probably what was supposed to happen, which is why, again, I appreciate your path. And it's very interesting to see how this has grown and refined, and to see your success is really fascinating.
Thanks.
So, I guess lastly, do you have any new projects or any impactful type of endeavors that you have going on now that you wanted to clue us into? Or
Yeah. I mean, a lot of my focus right now, one, I feel really fortunate and blessed to have such a great team at Red Productions and our leadership team there, where they really, like steer the ship day in and day out, keep us on path. And I've been able to be focused on like some of the other like, projects we're working on and developing, whether it's in TV or documentary or film, but also like the stuff in the community, like Gone to Texas Fund, and then even being involved as we like, head into another legislative session on like how we can make sure this, like the Fort Worth story is known in Austin, like with legislators, that they know how these jobs like are real up here. And like folks like Sheridan are continuing to come here and tell stories here. And so we want to make sure that we have the right sort of, not just incentives, but like workforce development and all that. So I love being able to be involved in the community in that way. So there's always like a lot of things, I guess I've got my plate spinning on.
yes,
But in the near term future, I'm thrilled we have the 16th annual Lone Star Film Festival coming here in November, or not coming here. It's always been here.
yes,
We're doing it this year in the Stockyards, and I'm the chair of the board for that. And actually just came from the board meeting where we're planning that. And that's going to be a really fun one because, we've got actually Taylor Sheridan's coming in to be honored, Ryan Bingham, and some more folks will be announced soon that are coming in for that. And then we have a film playing at the festival too that premieres this weekend in Nashville. And then we play a few other film festivals, and then it'll be fun to bring it home here. It's called Show Business is My Life, but I Can't Prove It. And it's a film about Gary Muledeer, who's like this lesser known comedian that was always kind of 20 feet from stardom. But we've got in it all of his friends that he's come up with over the years. So Steve Martin, Letterman, Leno, Conan, Carrot Top, like this huge cast of people that all signed up to be in it because they love Gary. And they all would have him on their shows when, over the years. And it's a retrospective for Gary as he's older now in his career, looking back on like, what is success and what, made him happy back then versus what makes him happy now. And so that's been really fun.
Sounds fascinating. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So it'll be playing Saturday, November 12th at the Lone Star Film Festival, which will be down in the Stockyards. And then, we've got some more stuff we're doing right now with my buddy Jonathan Morris. We were really thrilled last year to get to do this series called Self-Employed with him. It's about entrepreneurship, and it's on the Magnolia Network. You can see that right now if you have Discovery Plus. And it's these stories of entrepreneurship from all around the country. And then we got to really bring it home in episode 8 with a good friend of ours here, Carrie Crow, and Melt Ice Creams. If you don't watch it all the way through, just skip to episode 8. It's a fun one.
Don't let them cheat. You can watch them all.
Oh, yeah.
Binge them.
Yeah. And then, we always have, we did a documentary last year that's out on Discovery as well. It's called Fruitcake Fraud. And it's about this story that we were actually working on it before the pandemic as a feature film that's scripted. And we had Will Ferrell in it, and Julianne Moore had just joined it a week prior to the pandemic, and the pandemic hits and it all fell apart. We're putting that back together now as a scripted film and recasting it. But in the meantime, we did this documentary about it because it is a true story of how the controller at the Collins Street Bakery in Corsicana, Texas, world famous, fruitcake place, their controller embezzled $18 million over the course of 7 years from the bakery. And it's a really, crazy true crime story that is quite nutty. And yet has like a really cool, message of reconciliation and forgiveness in it. So we hope Discovery just rolls that out every Christmas as kind of the diehard of fruitcake frauds. So,
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Roll it right after A Christmas Story.
Yeah.
Bam.
There you go.
Every time. It's this classic. Well, I remember I talked to you about that several years back, and I didn't realize you'd even cast that thing and had it all ready to roll.
Oh yeah. It was like the most painful. There was a lot of things, right, that were painful about COVID, but that one, it was going to be our biggest film yet. It was financed, cast. We were ready to go. And then COVID hit and we're like, oh my gosh.
Of course.
And then Will took a role in Shrink Next Door, which kind of tied him up for a while. And then it's also kind of a similar role to this. So
that doesn't necessarily interfere with the opportunity to make a feature out of it?
No, because we still have the underlying rights on it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Then those are two different beasts. Typically, you put out a doc and then you put out a feature, and they're usually different audiences or
different audiences, different distributors. So Discovery has the unscripted rights in it.
Okay.
That we had, and we licensed that part off to them.
Interesting.
And then the scripted side we still have, and we're doing that with a script written by Trey Selman, who's just one of my favorite Texas writers and favorite writers all around, but he happens to live in Texas. And
awesome.
He's got a really cool project too about an old Fort Worth story in kind of North Texas. It's been recently announced. It's going to be coming to HBO probably next year, I think. It's called King Cobble. It's about Rex Cobble, the infamous oil rancher, banker, cutting horse extraordinaire, who also became one of the biggest drug importers into the U.S. in the 70s and 80s.
Those were the days, man.
And when he got busted, it was the largest seizure of private assets by the Fed to date at that time.
Really?
Yeah.
Aye. Yeah. See, you got to give me a list, give me a watch list. Well, I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you burning your busy day to come over here and spend time with us. But I think the stories you have to share are important, and I appreciate you taking the time to come share them with us, man.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Keep on keeping on the golden age caffeine. It's some sidewind you're on. Another situation. See the road from the stripes with the lights coming on. Freedom came upon a catastrophic dream. Another dark page to turn. Another situation. They can't have your heart to find. To pursue once has just another time. And every wish ain't hope till the soul is mine. Keep your muse on loop till your angel cries. A sunlit path you're on, obscure majestic trees. Can't see which way to turn. Just take a new direction. See the road from the side. Your old strides wherever long. Free to think about the way it's supposed to be. It's another dark page to turn. It's another situation.